welcome everyone out there listening to my voice. This is the Alex Jones Show. We're going to be here live for the next 2 hours till 4 p.m. Central. You can catch us every day during the week, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. And it's the Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Rob Dew, and we've got quite a show for you. Next segment, we're going to have Paul Watson coming in through Skype, the magic of Skype, from across the river. We're going to be talking about Ebola. I have a whole plethora of information on Ebola that we're going to be covering, from the government's preparation that they're not telling you about to the fact that they've known this thing can be airborne. And for at least 25 years, they've known this. And we're going to go over all that coming up. We've got quite a show for you. We're going to be covering the latest ISIS news. If you don't know, ISIS has released a third professional quality beheading video. This guy is a Brit. We're going to be covering that and what it means. They've released tons of videos before of them capturing Syrians and Iraqis and cutting their heads off and decapitating them. But these videos that really don't show any of the brutal carnage of it seem to really hit home with the American public and the government. There's the article today on Infowars.com. It was yesterday. Video, ISIS reportedly beheads a British aid worker. And then they bring up another one saying they're going to do him next. In Ebola news, we have 4 doctors now in the United States two have recovered. One's in Atlanta, one's up in Nebraska. So they're importing this stuff everywhere, just as Alex Jones predicted. They're going to be importing Ebola all into the United States, and they're literally flushing the waste down the toilet into the public sewer system. We're going to be going over that. In addition to ISIS, we've got a little bit of NFL news I might cover. We've got both sides of the aisle coming back with ISIS saying, we got to attack, we got to attack. So this is both sides ramping up for war. You've got it in Britain. People who were normally for individual sovereignty and freedom, people like Nigel Farage, are now saying we have to give up our liberty for security. And that's going to be the call as we march towards this global New World Order. Like I said, I'm Rob Dew. This is my first time to be hosting the show like this. I'm very honored to be doing it. Just a quick bio about myself. I've always been a person that's liked to look behind the curtain. And back when I was in college, I picked up these 2 books here. One's None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. And the other one is Who Runs Congress? And that was from the Ralph Nader Congress Project. Both books were instrumental in my waking up to what's really going on, not the left-right paradigm that most people are caught in, but to the global crime syndicate and how it operates here in America and how it operates worldwide. It's not just here that it's operating. It's going all over the place. We're going to have quite a show for you today. Like I said, Paul Watson's going to be coming up in the next hour. And if anybody knows about Ebola and where it's going, it's Paul Watson. He's been on this since the beginning. We've been writing articles about Ebola for a long time here at Infowars.com, trying to show the progression of this. And one thing I want to go to here in a second is this video model that has been coming out. It came out on the 10th of September. There's a video model showing how it would spread, and now they're saying it's going to kill about 5 million people. Well, in this model, and you guys can bring it up anytime. If you're watching on Prison Planet TV, you can see it. It starts in Africa. When it comes over to the to our hemisphere, it starts in Cuba. And it's interesting that Cuba has just sent a bunch of doctors to go help. And then it moves into Florida and then into the United States through Miami. So that's very interesting how this model took into account all this stuff. And it's really looking at, it's pretty scary how this stuff is all going to spread. And we're going to be right back. 1 minute break. I'm your host, Rob Dew. We're going to be back with Paul Joseph Watson talking about Ebola and a whole host of issues that you should be concerned about. So call your friends, get ready, strap yourselves in. It's going to be 2 more hours. We'll be right back.
Alex Jones here with a very important announcement for truth seekers. We've carried a lot of amazing films and books over the years on the online video bookstore at Infowars.com. And out of all the titles we've carried, one stands out because it is just so chillingly convincing. And that's Dreams from My Real Father by Joel Gilbert, available at Infowars.com. This film exposes the fraud that Obama is like nothing I've seen. If you want to know who Obama's real daddy is, this is the film for you. Don't forget, your purchase supports our broadcast and our growing media network. You'll also find at InfoWarsShop.com None Dare Call a Conspiracy by Gary Allen, the book that woke me up. We're also carrying Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21 by Rosa Corey. This book is coffin nails to the globalist takeover. The Greater Good, the most professional and up-to-date film I've ever seen exposing the scourge that is vaccines. These titles and a lot more are all available at InfoWarsShop.com.
And we have on the line via Skype over across in England, it's Paul Joseph Watson, writer of PrisonPlanet.com, Infowars.com, and somewhat of a video star now. He's making his own videos, putting them out there, putting the information out there. And let me tell you, if the future is, if I can gain anything from watching my children, they love to watch little videos on YouTube. That is the way we're going to wake up a lot of people. And my kids bring me stuff all the time and show it to me, because once you've implanted the seeds of freedom and liberty, there's no stopping it. And that's all we have to do is plant a seed. That's our job here. And that's what we do here. Paul, how are you doing today?
Good, Rob. Good to be on the air with you today.
All right. Well, let's get right into Ebola. We've got 4 doctors now killed in Sierra Leone. We've got 4 doctors that we brought here into the United States. Where's all this going?
Well, it's going towards hopefully answering the question which I've had since the very beginning when this started and when I started writing articles and making videos about it, which is, why are all these health workers being infected with Ebola? Of course, we're told that this strain, which is a new strain of the virus, can only be contracted by exchanging bodily fluids. So the health workers actually touching the bodily fluids of the Ebola victims. Now, you've seen the hazmat suits that they wear, the precautions that they take. Obviously, they go to extreme measures to prevent that from happening. Not just the doctors in Africa, but the American doctors who have taken the same precautions and still caught the virus. So now the WHO, for example, reports today, or a couple of days ago, unprecedented number of medical staff infected with Ebola. The outbreak of Ebola virus disease in West Africa is unprecedented in many ways, including the high proportion of doctors, nurses, and other health workers who have been infected. So 240 health workers in these West African countries, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, have been infected with Ebola, and more than 120 have died. So again, this raises the question, if they're taking all these precautions to prevent the exchange of bodily fluid to catch the virus, then why are they contracting Ebola? Unless this new strain of Ebola may, at least to a limited extent, have gone airborne, because we know the 2012 study, which we cited many times from Canada, they took pigs who were infected with Ebola, put them in a pen with monkeys that was separated by a wire fence, so no direct contact between the 2 species. And basically what happened, most of the monkeys contracted Ebola via the respiratory system and died from it, and that was back in 2012. So they proved back then that Ebola had gone airborne between these 2 species, at least to a limited degree. So now, as far back as 6 weeks ago, we were asking the same question. We were called conspiracy theorists for doing so. I appeared on CBS radio with Dick Morris on August 6th last month. And then a couple of days after that, CBS local news came out with a story saying, conspiracy theorist claims Ebola may be airborne, which is interesting because as of 2 days ago, Michael Osterholm, who is director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, wrote this big op-ed in the New York Times in which he said that basically health workers and experts are loath to consider, they fear even considering the fact that, quote, Ebola virus could mutate to become transmissible through the air. So now, 6 weeks after we first talked about it, we're getting top experts saying the same thing. We were called conspiracy theorists at the time for saying this. Now, top experts, doctors, medical professionals are starting to ask the same question, which is, has this new strain of Ebola gone airborne because it's unprecedented in the amount of people that it has infected. In fact, Michael Osterholm said that, quote, the current Ebola virus's hyper-evolution is unprecedented. There has been more human-to-human transmission in the past 4 months than likely occurred in the last 500 to 1,000 years. Each new infection represents trillions of throws of the genetic dice. So this is completely unprecedented, which is why we're asking the question, has it gone airborne, at least to a limited extent?
Well, Paul, before you go any farther, we've got a video clip that I found over the weekend. One of our excellent tipsters, and we got so many tipsters out there that just send us tip after tip after tip. This one is from a NOVA program that aired in the mid-90s, but it talks about an incident that happened in 1989 here in Virginia, and it's between air transmission of Ebola between monkeys. And you guys got that clip? Let's roll it.
In 1989, Ebola made its way to the U.S. Residents of this Washington, D.C. suburb had no idea that one of the world's deadliest viruses had emerged in their midst. In a primate quarantine unit in Reston, Virginia, monkeys in one of the holding rooms suddenly began to die. Secretly, a military team entered the quarantine unit and killed all 60 monkeys in the infected room. The crisis heightened as monkeys began to die in a different room. It appeared that the virus was moving through the ventilating system. In response, the military killed all 400 monkeys, ending the outbreak. This new strain of Ebola had shown the potential to spread through the air. Had it been lethal in humans, it could have been catastrophic.
There you go, Paul. So this has been on the radar since 1989, at least with the military, secretly, because no one else knew about it. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Well, that's amazing, of course, because, I mean, we had the Canadian study, but that was only from 2 years ago. So to hear that it's, you know, at least one strain between two species of monkeys has been airborne since 1989 is, again, is shocking. And this is what I've said over and over again. You know, I can talk about this till I'm blue in the face. I'm just a journalist. I'm just writing about it. I'm not an expert on it. We need actual experts and infectious disease specialists to be looking into this possibility, because it seems like it could be a good explanation for the aggressiveness of how this virus has spread. But as Osterholm said in the New York Times the other day, they're kind of scared of yelling fire in a crowded theater because they think that it's gonna cause hysteria and mass panic, which is interesting because, you know, the pharmaceutical industry normally loves hysteria and mass panic because it sells drugs and it sells vaccines, which is what we saw in 2009 with the swine flu outbreak, which was very different, of course, because they already had the vaccine lined up and they created a huge, huge scare. I mean, at the time that there was talk of troops on the streets and martial law, and this was in the newspapers every day, and they had the vaccine lined up. Probably millions of people globally took the vaccine, which was completely unnecessary. Swine flu was only really a danger to sick people, young people, and the elderly. So the majority of the global population was under no risk whatsoever. But they sold this drug in huge quantities, and it was engendered off the back of hysteria created by governments and the pharmaceutical industry, which we're not seeing in this case because they've been very slow to develop a vaccine or a drug to treat Ebola, which many people have suggested is because, you know, basically people don't give a damn about black people in Africa dying from this, and it's kind of, there's no profit in it. In fact, we've seen top experts come out and admit. Dr. Ben Newman said, I think it was to Bloomberg, quote, "There isn't enough panic to justify a cure." So there's not enough money in it to justify intense research into vaccines and drugs. So basically they're just going to let it proliferate. And now we've got other experts, as I reported on Friday, and this was quite a bizarre story because they changed the story after we reported it. This was Jonas Schmidt-Chanasit of the Bernard Nocht Institute for Tropical Medicine in Hamburg. He told Deutsche Welle that it would kill 5 million people, and we can get into that after the break.
That's right. We'll get right back to that. And we do have somebody developing a vaccine with the help of the Gates Foundation. Don't worry. They're going to come save us. West African health centers cannot keep up with the Ebola outbreak. Ebola outplaces global response, World Health Organization says. But don't worry, we've got Bill Gates coming to the rescue. He's going to give $50 million to fight Ebola. Then we have GlaxoSmithKline, who has a vaccine that's been fast-tracked for clinical trials. GlaxoSmithKline. These are the same people that in 2012 were fined only 400,000 pesos for killing 14 babies in Argentina for tests they did on a pneumonia vaccine. So I guess we can all be assured that since it's GlaxoSmithKline, they're going to do good at making this Ebola vaccine. And one more thing. Paul, did you see this over the weekend? This is published on September 12th. Lakeland Industries announces global availability of hazmat suits for Ebola. And the president and the CEO of Lakeland Industries came out and said that the State Department had put in a bid for 160,000 suits. The State Department is getting 160,000 hazmat suits to protect from something that now might even be going airborne. Paul, what do you make of all this madness?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, 160,000 suits, and it's the State Department that's making the purchase. You would think that it would be the CDC, but that suggests it's some kind of national security issue.
Or a health aid organization that's going to send people to Africa. No, it's the State Department.
Exactly. I mean, that's concerning, and it ties into what we've reported before, which, of course, probably about 6 weeks ago, Obama signed this amendment to an executive order, which was originally signed by Bush to deal with SARS, to forcibly detain Americans who show signs of respiratory illness, merely signs of respiratory illness. And then we already had the CDC measures, which were in place before that, which allowed for the quarantine of, quote, well persons who, quote, do not show symptoms of the disease. So again, it's this medical martial law scenario. You've also got the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act, which the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons warned could turn governors into dictators. That's another quote. So you've got this system that's already inbuilt and ingrained, ready to be turned on in the case of a pandemic of this nature. And yeah, that's of concern. The State Department buying 160,000 hazmat suits with this Ebola virus raging, with speculation that it may have gone airborne. So it's of extreme concern. And then you mentioned Bill Gates, which reminded me of the whole eugenics angle. Dr. Charles Arntzen, head of the Biodesign Institute for Infectious Diseases and Vaccinology, and he was one of the guys who worked on the experimental Ebola treatment, which the two Americans who flew into Atlanta received. He joked at a conference, I believe it was a couple of years ago, that the key to solving overpopulation was to create a genetically engineered virus that could kill 2 billion people. And these are the people that are creating the very vaccines which are going to be doled out to people if this hysteria gets any bigger. And he's joking about, oh, we need a genetically engineered virus to kill 2 billion people to solve overpopulation, which we know is a complete statistical lie if you actually delve down into the figures.
Right.
Global
and Bill Gates is Paul, before you keep going, Bill Gates has gone on television with TED TV, putting his little equation up there that says one of these things has to go to zero. And it's people that are going to go to zero. That's what he wants to see. I mean, that's it. I mean, Bill Gates is a eugenicist. His dad was part of Planned Parenthood, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, it would seem. But here's another interesting fact. With these patients we're bringing in to the United States, these doctors, they're just flushing the waste down the toilet. Atlanta's news agencies have revealed that Ebola's patient waste, including feces and urine, are going into the city's public sewer system. They say there's no risk of infection to the general public because their waste management practices will kill any viruses flushed into the system. Does that make you feel? Does that make you feel any safer? What if a pipe bursts?
I can't imagine that they've had that much experience in flushing Ebola out of the waste system. It sounds like it would be unprecedented, so I wouldn't have complete confidence in that. But even just the fact of bringing these infected doctors into America, I mean, Dr. Bob Arnott, who is an infectious disease specialist, said, quote, "There is no medical reason to bring them here, especially when you see how well Dr. Bradley was, because they had the same drug, the exact same drug over in Africa. So why was there even a need to put anybody at risk by bringing them into Atlanta?" Some of the speculation was centered around the fact that the CDC had a patent on a strain of Ebola and a vaccine already ready for it. So that was why they were bringing them into the country. I'm not sure about that, but even the top infectious disease specialists have questioned why they need to bring them into America in the first place when you can treat them with the exact same drug in Africa. Remember, SARS patients were brought into Canada from Asia in 2003, and they ended up infecting 400 people and killing 44 people as a result, because they brought them into the country when it wasn't necessary. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense.
And if you don't believe, Paul, that the CDC has an actual patent on Ebola, there's a global research article from August 6th that I'm bringing up on my computer over here that you guys can pull up. A weapon of mass destruction. And oh, that might not even be the article. This article is why it's a different article, actually, from August 3rd. And why do the U.S. Centers for Disease Control own a patent on Ebola? And it's called Ebola Bun. And I'm even going to give you the patent number. If you don't believe me, it's CA2741523A1. There's the patent number right there. And it was awarded in 2010. There you go. Very interesting. So they own, the CDC owns the patent on it. Maybe they wanted to see if this was their strain of Ebola that's out there. And another thing people don't seem to be too concerned about it. If they decide to crack down and round people up and do this with, grabbing, it's like this. When I was in Chicago, we were accompanying the National Guard, who were doing hazmat, recovery, rescue operations for a biological pandemic that had happened. They were also going after gun owners, which they were calling terrorists. But they were going after these people, and one of the exercises they had was taking place at a sports stadium. And there are sports stadiums all over the country. You got high school, you got college, you got professional. You have plenty of sports stadiums in this country, and they were going to use these stations as staging grounds, and also places to round people up, which we saw in Katrina with New Orleans. So this is not unprecedented. These are all over the place, and anytime they want to pull the trigger and say, hey, come here if you want to get your vaccine, bring it on in, come on in, we got a place for you to stay, but then you're never going to get out. They didn't let those people out of the Superdome for almost a week. And that's where this stuff could go if it does get loose in the United States, which begs the question, why are we bringing these people in? Why not keep them offshore? Why not build a medical boat if you want to treat these people? Why not do that? A lot of questions going on with this, and we're going to finish up with this in the next segment. We're also going to start taking your calls towards the end of this hour. It is the Alex Jones Show. This is Sunday, September 14th, 2014. We are live about another hour and a half. I'm your host, Rob Dew. I'm joined with Paul Watson, writer of PrisonPlanet.com, Infowars.com. If you don't know me, I'm the news director over here, mainly for the Infowars Nightly News. I run that crew, the reporters, keep them busy and sending them out on missions, one of which they just got back from New York during the 13th anniversary of 9/11. You guys can punch this up here. I want to show you two videos here on the Alex Jones channel. This is something that I spend a lot of my time on. YouTube.com/The Alex Jones channel. We got two videos right now that are going viral. One is from the Nightly News on Friday, and this is Darren McBreen's piece, Shocking Demonic Photos of Obama, and it shows him literally with devil horns. I mean, really scary. And if you think that this is, oh, well, he just happened to be set up that way, they pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure stuff like this doesn't occur. and they pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure stuff like this does occur. So let me tell you, that's a message right there. There's your demonic president. And the other one is 9/11 firefighter blows WTC 7 cover-up wide open. That's an interview that Leon McAdoo did with firefighter Rudy Dent, who was off that day of 9/11. But after the towers collapsed, he raced over to his fire station. Him and his boys commandeered a mail truck and went in there to help rescue people. And he actually saw explosions happening at WTC 7. He saw molten metal, things that he cannot explain as a firefighter, and one of which is how the building collapsed. This doesn't happen regularly. In fact, the only time it's happened because of a fire is during 9/11. So you don't have to, don't beat me up about it. Go look at building structural integrity. Go look at office building fires that have happened. There was a fire in Shanghai, China a few years ago that burned for over 24 hours and did not collapse into its own footprint. So that stuff just doesn't magically happen. It has to be planned. So that's an amazing interview with Rudy Dent. You can see that 9/11 firefighter blows WTC 7 cover-up wide open. And we've got a few things on there, a few of our little playlists. You can see Joe Biggs crossing the Rio Grande in El Paso, our adventures in Ferguson. Lots of stuff up there on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. But one way you can support us is by becoming a member of PrisonPlanet.tv, which we have all the same stuff that you see on the Alex Jones channel, but you can download it. You can spread it around. We've got the day show, the nightly news, our special reports. We have some movies up there. Alex has made dozens of documentaries. I helped make a couple of them, one of which is Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA, which I was a co-director on back in, we released that in 2010. And just an amazing wealth of information that you can access for just pennies a day. And you can use your username and password and share it with up to 11 people. You can have 11 of you on right now watching the show, watching the videos as we pull them up. Did you see the video that we showed from the NOVA presentation, where they're talking about how this Ebola went airborne through the ventilation shaft? Okay, this stuff is happening right now. No one can explain how it's spreading. No one can explain how these doctors are getting sick. When these doctors go in there, they're wearing hazmat suits. They're spraying themselves down with Lysol and chlorine. There's no reason for this many doctors to begin sick. We've just had our 4th doctor die in Sierra Leone, and we've got 4 doctors here, 2 which have seemed to have recovered, and 2 which are still sick, one in Atlanta and the other in Nebraska. So we've just brought it to the middle of the country. Why not? And they're flushing it all down the toilet. All the waste is going down the toilet. So I guess they think they've got it under control. Paul Watson, let's finish up on Ebola, and I want to play that clip again from the NOVA presentation in case people missed it, because we did play it earlier in the show. And I think people need to hear this, that they've known since 1989 that this thing can go airborne. So how would you like to finish this up?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I wrote a story on Friday about this German expert from the Institute for Tropical Medicine in Hamburg. He basically gave some statements to Deutsche Welle, which is a major German publication. He said that the Ebola virus in Sierra Leone and Liberia would only burn itself out when it's infected the entire population of those 2 countries and killed 5 million people. And he basically said that all hope is lost for those 2 countries and that it's too late. What's weird about it is literally within an hour of me publishing that report on InfoWars and giving it a headline worthy of the quotes that were actually in the article about 5 million people dying, they changed not only the headline of the article, but they removed the quotes from the article from this expert saying that 5 million people would die in Africa as a result of Ebola. And there was no formal retraction. That's the thing. If you change a news article after the fact in such a major way, you know, this wasn't a spelling error or something. It was a major retraction. It was a change of the headline, removing quotes.
That's right. You
normally have to announce it.
You put a note saying, hey, we made a mistake. He didn't actually say 5 million. He said 200,000, which they didn't put that as a retraction. They just left it. They just removed it. It was, I guess, a piece of 1984 jargon. And what's interesting is that they say this thing's going to double in about 2 weeks. So they say 20,000 people could be affected here by Friday, but then that's going to double. And this thing just keeps going on and on and on. And they have no way to really stop it. there's no supposed vaccine, if there will ever be a real vaccine, if it doesn't help spread it. And I find it interesting, too, that as soon, and I was watching this months ago, when it first started happening, the villagers that they were treating were attacking these medical centers. They were saying the doctors were helping spread this. They were accusing them of it. Now, I don't know if they were, or if it was just this case of them being superstitious. But I find that very interesting that the villagers were freaking out that these health workers were here and that the virus just kept getting worse and worse. Now, it could be a coincidence. It could be. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Paul?
I don't know, Rob. It's bizarre. There's also a story about a black market treatment for Ebola, which is now circulating in Africa, which the WHO and the other health authorities are trying to clamp down on and eliminate. So there's obviously a lot of concern from people in Africa that if there is a treatment for this, which we know they've been working on it, that they're not getting proper access to it. So now they're having to go to the black market to try and get something which, I don't know, it may or may not work, but the WHO is keen to clamp down on it. So there's a lot of bizarre things going on behind the scenes. And again, with the media aspect, there's a lot of massaging of the message. I mean, we know the CDC has been very reluctant to release any information on suspected Ebola sufferers in the United States. And obviously that's the same in Germany and across the board. But also I wanted to mention the advisory that the CDC put out to the airline staff to provide surgical masks to potential Ebola victims in order to, quote, reduce the number of droplets expelled into the air by talking, sneezing or coughing, not use compressed air, which might spread infectious material through the air. So at least to some extent, they're also concerned about it spreading through the air. And this was an advisory that was put out months ago and is still in effect. So again, it goes back to the speculation of whether it's gone airborne and that it's not just contractable via exchange of bodily fluids.
And we've got the video clip from the NOVA program in the 90s talking about an 89 secret monkey eradication program that the United States government underwent. Let's go to that clip real quick.
In 1989, Ebola made its way to the U.S. Residents of this Washington, D.C. suburb had no idea that one of the world's deadliest viruses had emerged in their midst. In a primate quarantine unit in Reston, Virginia, monkeys in one of the holding rooms suddenly began to die. Secretly, a military team entered the quarantine unit and killed all 60 monkeys in the infected room. The crisis heightened as monkeys began to die in a different room. It appeared that the virus was moving through the ventilating system. In response, the military killed all 400 monkeys.
There you go.
Ending the
outbreak. Military was involved in covering up an airborne transmission of Ebola. We'll be right back.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield, true nascent iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.